Welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel and our regular Sunday guest, Jamie. Jamie, you and I, we might have a disagreement. We normally agree on most boxing things, but I see from the comments section that we might end up taking a different position over Turki Alalshikh. This
Maybe
um,
so.
might be so. So it's just so that everybody who's watching knows. The other day, Turki Alalshikh made a tweet or X post. I don't know what we call them these days, right? And he essentially said that he doesn't want any more Tom and Jerry type boxing. He doesn't want one boxer chasing the other boxer around the ring. He wants people to give everything they've got and to leave everything in the ring. And when I saw that, I thought, hey, this is a pretty good thing. Um, you know, we were very, very disappointed with, like the Devin Haney, the Canelo William Skull thing. The guy who's writing the checks is laying down the law, says, look, I want value for money. So I was happy with that. But I see a few people are saying that there's much, much deeper stuff going on there. And you were one of the people that thought that this might not be a good thing. So why don't you tell me how I've got this wrong and and educate me?
Well, I don't necessarily think you've got it wrong, Bob, because it's just an opinion, isn't it? But I'm quite surprised that you've taken the stance you have, being a man of law, because I've got a law degree myself, and we're always, the moralistic arguments of law are that the legislature, the judiciary, and the enforcement, shall we say, shouldn't just be one. Now, if, in my opinion, if Turki Alalshikh didn't own the Ring magazine, then, fair enough. It's just an opinion. I'm bankrolling it. It's an opinion. But the Ring magazine is technically the legislature and the judiciary and the enforcement rolled into one, I believe, because, the Ring magazine really is the only belt that matters. And if the owners are the only belt that matters, wade into an argument and say, right, well, I want this done my way, he can then, it's basically setting a precedent, a dangerous precedent, and saying, well, can I leech my way into judging? Can I leech my way into all sorts of, the murky sides of the sport? And fair enough, he might do it good. He might do it good. But I'm not arguing over the sort of the good and bad as such and the little intricacies. Just from the outside, I think he should be more impartial, particularly because he owns the Bible of boxing, who give out belts and basically are at the forefront of saying who's number one in boxing at any given time in any given division. That's
So,
my argument.
so your argument is really all about the concentration of power in the hands of one person, whereas my argument is try this on for size. He's come into boxing. He has bankrolled a number of fairly significant boxing cards. He is not saying that a particular style of boxing that we'll call it the boxing on the back foot, being very defensive and not being a crowd pleaser. He's not saying that should be banned. He's just saying on my shows, that's not what I want to see. There's no problem with somebody else putting on a show and having, Shakur Stevenson and somebody else boxing. But he's saying that for my shows, I want to see something that is more exciting that the fans want to see. What's wrong with that? It's like if you own a restaurant and you want to serve fish, you're not saying that the rest of the streets can't serve pork chops. You're just serving fish.
Why do we need to hear that, Bob? Why do we need to hear what he thinks? If I go for a job and I'm working, say I'm at work, I don't know what HR laws are like in Canada, but if I get reprimanded at work, I don't expect it to be bandied about the office. I don't expect everyone to turn around and say, "Well, he's having a bad time of it, isn't he? Like he's in trouble if he doesn't put his socks up, he's in trouble. We're going to dock his pay." It's the same sort of principle, but just on
Um,
a bigger scale.
I understand I understand the principle. Um, However, I think there's a difference between giving a reprimand to someone like you or me from our employer or former employer in my case, and saying to the public, you were all disappointed when you bought tickets for my show. I paid many millions of dollars to hire entertainment. I'm sorry you guys were disappointed. I'm also disappointed. And I want the world to know that I'm not going to spend this much money on this level of entertainment next time. I want to give you all what you want to watch, which is some more uh, vigorous demonstration of the profession of pugilism.
I I understand your point, Bob, but and I agree with it in some sense, but I think we are venturing into dictatorship, and we're venturing into, is he Caesar? Like, what next? Is there going to be a thumbs down? There are fighters out there that are never going to be able to give that value for money because their whole remit is pure skill. Guillermo Rigondeaux, for example, he could put a glass eye to sleep, but he was a
Mm-hmm.
supreme uh, practitioner of boxing. Under the new regime, he wouldn't have got anywhere near the ring. I just think if if the position was that the House of Saud and the Saudi royal family were not in charge now of the ring magazine, I'd be all for it. But think about it. The argument was when Oscar De La Hoya had the ring magazine, people were making the same argument.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, Oscar can't have an opinion. It's dangerous. Why is a promoter allowing himself to be at the forefront of the sport? He's not allowed to. We're not allowed to criticize. We're not allowed to say this or that. And we vociferously said, don't criticize the Saudi regime because you'll be put at the back of the bus. And it seems to be more acceptable now just because the man's got a lot of money. It doesn't sit well with me. It's never sit well with me. It's okay. If you want to bankroll the operation, you've done it at your own behest. You've done it at your own choice, the choice of the Saudi royal family. That doesn't mean I have to hear your opinion as a fan. And if people were unhappy, that's all right. Well, horses for courses. We're not all going to be happy. This is one show.
But
One show, and you've also got to factor in the fact. Sorry, Bob, I'm ranting. You've
no, no,
also
no,
got to
carry on.
factor in the fact. Well, you've got to factor in that one of the participants had just been done for performance enhancing drugs. He'd just been found guilty, and suddenly he's not performing. So that's an issue at the base of the sport that needs resolving,
Yeah.
and that's bigger than Turki Alalshikh. He should keep his opinions to himself. That's my opinion.
So my view um, is, you've got like movie studios, right? So let's say Turki Alalshikh buys Universal Studios and he makes a whole bunch of movies that he likes and people like. That's nothing stopping Walt Disney making a whole bunch of totally different movies that another group of people will like. So from my perspective, Turki Alalshikh says, I don't want Tom and Jerry type boxing. I don't want this dancing. I want fans to watch my shows to see fighters who are going to leave it all in the ring. Um, that there's nothing stopping, I don't know, Matchroom Boxing putting on another show that really focuses on the highly technical aspects of boxing. And you've got people watching that who love that. But maybe people like me would sort of say, you know what, I'm going to watch a Turkey show because I want to watch the possibility of there being a knockout.
Mm. Again, again, I sort of semi-agree with what you're saying, but the fact is, the reality of the situation is, Turki Alalshikh's priced Matchroom, he's priced Warren and everybody out of the market because, so there's an implied threat there. You're not going to be getting your breakfast, lunch, and dinner if you don't
Hmm.
step up because Warren and co aren't they're not paying as much. There's an implied monopoly going on.
For
It's
sure
not
there is, yeah.
explicit. Yeah, it's not explicit, but because there's a technical monopoly going on, well, we don't need to hear your opinions. If like you're saying there, Bob, like nobody was happy. Right? Well, we know we weren't happy with what was being shown. So it doesn't take a genius to work out that we need to see better shows. Turkey doesn't need to make his point. He doesn't need, like, I don't know how familiar you are with soccer, Bob, and I know I'm going to anger people by saying soccer, and I know we had the chat a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah,
Soccer's the real term.
yeah,
But I was a Chelsea fan. I no longer watch football, but I was a Chelsea fan. Roman Abramovich was at the top of the tree.
yeah.
And we'd have a new manager every quarter, right? Everybody knew what was going on, but Roman Abramovich kept his counsel. He didn't have to say anything, but he could just do it behind the scenes and everybody would be quite happy. Chelsea fans, we were still winning things. Everyone would have a bit of gripe and a moan, but everybody knew who was boss. The world would work a lot better if that was the situation. We don't need to hear the voice
So,
because, yeah.
so if I understand you correctly, you don't mind what Turkey said, but you wish he hadn't made it a public dressing down of people like Canelo, Scholl, Garcia, etc.
Effectively, yeah, because I think he's got a position of responsibility now because he's
So,
head of the Ring magazine.
so let's
And it,
just let's just unpack this a little bit. So there's a big difference between sort of humiliating me or you by our employer in public and a multi millionaire like Garcia or Canelo being obliquely reprimanded by the person who hired them to put on a performance for fans.
he didn't hire them to put on a performance for fans, though, did he? Like
Well,
he happened to be the promoter, and all he did was he facilitated a competition. The competition isn't for the fans; it's for the fighters. If the fans
okay,
choose to
okay,
watch,
yeah, okay, I get
yeah,
you. Yes,
yeah.
the boxer. It behooves the boxer to fight in the style and the technique that gives that boxer the best chance of winning the fight. Correct?
And that's my point. That's my point, Bob.
Right.
Yeah.
And so so what you're saying is that if people tune in to watch that, they should not tune in to be entertained necessarily, but they should tune in to watch two professional athletes put their game plans against each other and to simply watch the perfection of sports play out so that boxer A or boxer B wins.
Yeah, you can tune in for entertainment. You can, but don't expect it because, yeah, like you say, any sport, you could have a ball draw, 0-0 playing soccer. You could have a game of basketball that's not particularly enthralling.
Or you could have a 5 day
Um,
test match
well, yeah,
with Jeffrey
yeah,
with, with,
exactly.
with Jeffrey Boycott at the wicket for first 2 days scoring like 50 runs.
Well, there you go. So, yeah, I know I sound like I'm being a bit of a fuddy-duddy about it and all that, but it just doesn't sit right with me that the person bankrolling. He's got an opinion, and he's also at the pinnacle of the sport with the Ring magazine. If he didn't own the Ring magazine, I wouldn't feel as bad about it, but I would have the same gripe if Oscar De La Hoya started mouthing off. And to Oscar De La Hoya's credit, he never seemed to mix, you know, business and pleasure, so to
But
speak.
isn't this a case that we, you and I, are attaching historical importance to the Ring magazine? That maybe it's no longer the case that the Ring magazine is the Bible of boxing. Maybe people now look at the Ring magazine and say, oh, yeah, this is Turkey's advertising vehicle. So we're not going to take what we read in the Ring magazine in the same way that we used to, like independent, authoritative. We're going to just now say it's Turkey's mouthpiece.
If that was the case, stop advertising the Ring magazine belt as the only belt that really matters. Don't award it to the number one.
Right.
If you get rid of the belt, I haven't got a problem with it.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I'm interested in how, two fans can end up at sort of differing views on here. And I hear you that, um, if Turkey gets to a position where he can absolutely dictate how fighters fight, that could end up being deleterious to the sport.
Could
But I
shorten
think,
lives, Bob.
pardon?
Could shorten lives as well.
Well, that is the concern, and that's one area where I actually began to worry a little bit. Um, if a fighter feels that he has to essentially die on his shield every time he gets a chance to fight on a Turkey card, it could lead to fighters ending up, you know, well, look at John Conti was done at 27. John H. Stracey was done at 26. Bugner was done at 27. And you look at the
Mm,
fights they'd had, and those are not exact ages. I might be out by a year, but you
yeah,
look at the fights those guys had and the wars they had, and yes, to box past 30, what was an unusual thing. Now we have boxers boxing past 40. It's not because boxers punch softer or heads are harder. They're simply not fighting as much.
no.
So
Mm-hmm.
Turkey could be foreshortening careers by mandating that fighters fight in a certain way.
It just doesn't. The whole thing doesn't sit right with me, and I don't want to come across like there might be people in the comments turning around and saying, "Oh, Jamie's just disagreeing with everything Bob says." You know, we're presenting an argument both sides, aren't we?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you
I mean,
know, it just doesn't sit right with me. I wouldn't like you're turning fighters into whores effectively, and I don't know. It just does something from to the sport from bottom to top. People are bowing down to this man there. I mean, that's a different argument altogether, isn't it? And I appreciate that.
it,
I'm wandering off, but people are holding his hand. They're forgetting human rights abuses,
that that
all in the name of money. So
that that.
this man, he's got far too much power.
But with respect, and I'm not sort of suggesting that any part of that argument is in any way weak or in any way not worth pursuing.
Hmm.
But that is broadening the argument, right? If we're just
Yeah,
focusing on one thing, and
yeah,
should a promoter who has, if not a monopoly, close to, should a promoter be able to say, I want this style of fight? And
no,
you're saying that you've got concerns about that.
no. One more point I'll make, and I keep relating it to soccer because I think it is. I think there is some relevance there. Restraint of trade, the
Yeah,
Bosman ruling and things like that.
yeah,
You basically fighters fight for money. It's prize fighting. That's what it is. So Turkey is there and he's saying, yeah, you have to fight a certain way. Now I understand what you're saying, Bob. There are alternatives available,
yeah.
but if those alternatives are not paying as well, you could. And I mean, we are. It is a bit of a. It's a bit of a wild maybe a wild point I'm making, but it's something to throw out into the ether. You could argue then that Turkey, he's causing potential like on top of what the worries for health and things like that. There could be a potential. Well, if I don't buck my ideas up, you're restraining my sort of trade options. It could be restraint of trade because he's paying the best. I can't get on your show because you're causing me to fight a certain way. I'm not comfortable with it. There's
But
all sorts of
but
arguments. I know
Turkey
that sounds.
Turkey could counterpoint and saying, I'm not restraining your trade at all. Firstly, the world's a big place, and you can practice your trade elsewhere. Secondly, I'm adopting a meritocracy. I consider certain fighters to be more worthy of having a slot on a Riyadh season show based on the following criteria. Um, crowd pleasing, knockout ratio, aggression. You say those are the like. It's like, again, if you had a movie studio, right? You have a great comedian who's,
Yeah.
but you say to your great comedian, "Hey man, you're a great comedian and you're as funny as fuck, but
Hmm.
I'm looking for an action hero. I'm looking
Yeah.
for the next Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you're the next Robin Williams. You're fabulous, but you're not the right guy for this role."
Yeah.
It's like saying to Devin Haney, you're a super skilled boxer, and I love what you do, but to be honest, I'm looking for somebody who's probably going to try and drop somebody in the sixth round.
Hmm.
I'm looking for Boots Ennis. I'm looking for
I
Boots
know what you
Ennis,
mean.
and
I know what you mean.
you and Shakur are fabulous guys, but I'm looking for Boots Ennis.
And I know the argument as well, Bob. It just coming to me mind when I talked about restraint of trade. People are going to be shouting UFC, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be talking UFC, which is ironic because obviously that model could be in the offing, couldn't it, for boxing with the TKO partnership?
Yeah, and I mean, I think there is a worry, right, that you could end up with a Turkey dominated boxing where essentially there's such a premium on excitement that you end up almost sort of only seeing one style of boxing, and that other style of boxing becomes the purview of amateur boxing.
Mm.
And in other words, it becomes to boxing what the WWE is to wrestling.
Yeah,
Like, if you go to watch Greco-Roman wrestling, unless you really know what you're watching, it ain't that exciting, right?
no,
But you watch the WWE, and it's exciting, especially if you don't know it's scripted, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's
exactly. No, I know you mean.
so. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, and it was very controversial. There were lots of people commenting on the post there. So I think a
Well,
lot of people will be
we want
agreeing with
to,
you.
yeah, we want to be hearing views, don't we, Bob? So make sure you comment again, and I don't mind if people have a go.
Oh,
Um,
I mean, honestly,
I
I
stand
think
by
that a
my
lot of
views.
people. Sorry, man, I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, it's not, no, I was just saying, like, well, yeah, I like seeing the comments of people and stuff like that. I'm sure you'd agree.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of room for very healthy disagreement. I don't think either of you and I are saying that Turkey is all good. Um, we're not saying these all bad either. We're saying that a statement that on its face looks to be good is worthy of further analysis and discussion, and that's what we're providing, right?
Scrutiny. Yeah, exactly. Scrutiny. And I was I just wanted to scrutinize that. So thank you, Bob.
Yeah, no,
Thanks
I
for
think
being my, uh, you
I,
know,
I mean, I do get your point. I mean, I like to see exciting boxing, right?
yeah,
And that's probably because, to be perfectly honest, like I don't have the experience that our friend Jules has, right? So, like, when I look at a fight, I'm not looking at it through his eyes. I mean, I'm looking at something that is, I mean, I want to be excited.
yeah.
I want to have that emotional roller coaster, to be honest with you.
You want to see Archer Ogatti rather than Floyd Mayweather?
Very much so. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's
I
like,
mean, Floyd Mayweather can still be exciting, though, can't he? I compared the two, but look at what Floyd Mayweather did to Archer Ogatti. It was
yeah.
he pieced him up, didn't he?
And there's definitely, like, you can be a great back foot fighter. I'm not I didn't read what Turkey wrote. as being no backfoot fighting.
No,
I mean, Sugar Ray Robinson knocked out Gene Fulmer going backwards.
he did. Mayweather knocked Hatton out going backwards.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, so
Mm,
those kind of fighters, I don't think that anybody would say, oh, we don't want those kind of fighters. I mean, I think we don't want William Skull kind of fighters.
no,
So I think it
definitely
is,
not. No offense, William Cole.
um, talking about backfoot fighting, yeah, I, I still feel that that Fabio Wardley, man, that one punch knockout of poor Justice Hooney, man, the
Yeah,
one mistake he made, eh?
it was sad, wasn't it? Really, it was sad because I I thought we were seeing a bit of a breakout. I'm not going to say breakout star because you know I think the only real star now is our friend Alexander Usyk.
Yeah.
But certainly, you know, someone that because I say Ajit Kabayel, he really impresses me. I think Hooney was modelling, well, not modelling himself on him, but they're very, very similar. And I think he can come again. I just hope
Oh yeah.
that the other week, yeah, I just hope that the other week didn't dent his confidence too much. You
I
know,
um I feel very strongly that a loss should not in any way really negatively affect a young boxer's career. I mean,
no,
we could both recite names of of Hall of Famers who took losses early in their career, and
yep,
and more than one.
yeah,
We seem to
exactly.
be, and since I blame Floyd Mayweather Jr. I mean, since Money Mayweather, we seem to have gotten totally bent out of shape about preserving the O.
Yeah, I know, I
I mean,
know. It's TV companies, isn't it? TV companies want something to sell, and it's a lot easier said than zero because they can say, well, this fighter's impenetrable. If we get another one who's impenetrable, fireworks can happen, you know?
yeah, it's such nonsense, though, right? Like we see, fighters you know, with zeros, and yet we know that that is not a real resume because we look at who they fought, and they've built I don't know, a 15-0 record off tomato cans.
Absolute rubbish. Yeah, exactly. I know. But that's the difference between, the hardcores and the casuals,
Yeah, it
which are
is.
two terms that I'm coming to sort of dislike. But it's a way of categorizing people that sort of know the ins and outs of the sport and who see it just on a level of aesthetics. They might look at people like and we were talking about it before. They might look at the exciting fighters like Archie Ogatti and think, oh, because he's entertaining, he was the man. But Archie Ogatti, right, he could box. He was quite a decent, proficient boxer. But against you, Floyd Mayweather of the world, who weren't as entertaining and that, he was going to get absolutely carved up. You
Well,
know?
it does give people the wrong idea of a fighter's ability sometimes. Like, getting back to one of my favorite fighters, Fabio Wardley, there are people who would think that he's unbeatable.
Yeah,
And yet,
and he's certainly not.
you and I know that, well, yeah, he beat Hooney, but he has identified himself as a certain level now.
He
He,
acknowledged that as well. He
he,
did an
he
he
did,
did
didn't he?
an interview with proper boxing, I think it was, who's on the zone.
Yeah.
And yeah, he said it himself. He was just like,
Yes.
"Look, I know there's a lot I've got to work on.
And he's
Fair
learning
play
on
to
the
him.
job. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
hey, should we move to
fair play.
the to part two?
Yeah, let's. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, man.